That's enough out of you. A weekly podcast where you'll hear the truth, or at least a closer version of the truth than most of the bullshit that's out there. Here are your hosts, Bill Rader and Sean Kane.
I believe in America. America has made my fortune. Hello and welcome to That's Enough Out of You. I'm your host, Bill Rader.
And I'm Sean Kane.
And you have stumbled upon a weekly podcast where we talk about sports and history and sports history. We talk about historical figures and pop culture. We talk about mafia movies and shows. We talk about mafia movies and shows about mafia movies. In fact, that's what we're doing today.
We talk about whatever we want because it's our show. It
is our show. And we have some help with that show today. We have with us a very special guest, Alex Robinson from the Godfather Minute, Star Wars Minute. He's a tremendous podcaster. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm happy to be here. Glad to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you here, man. Alex has been doing podcasting for quite a while, and he's also an artist. Long time, and does some great artwork as well. You have your comic book series, Box Office Poison, right?
Yep, I've done a couple of graphic novels over the years. Box Office Poison, Tricked, Too Cool to Be Forgotten, and Our Expanding Universe. That's my complete oeuvre. If you'll pardon my plugging.
All right. No, that's cool. And also, most importantly, the logo for this show. You created that for us. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. We're getting a ton of good feedback on that.
Yeah, Alex, I can't tell you how many people love that logo. It's tremendous, buddy. Thank you.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and it really put me on the map. So I should be thanking you guys for breaking me.
So Star Wars Minute, that's been going on for quite a while. You guys started that quite a while ago. I think, what was it, 2012 you started doing the movies?
Yeah, I guess this this year that's just closing was our 10th year of podcasting, which is bonkers considering we just started doing it as like a goof, like, hey, that would be a fun thing to do, just talk about Star Wars for a little bit, and here we are. Yeah,
you guys have essentially created a whole universe of Star Wars Minute listeners and the listener society on Facebook and everything.
Yeah, if you go to the website moviesbyminutes.com, you'll see that I think there's currently over 200 shows that people have mimicked our format of going from a movie minute by minute. So it's humbling to think that all these people are doing creative endeavors that they might not have if we had not done our silly little show. So moviesbyminutes.com. Check it out, everyone.
Check it out. It's great. There's so many great podcasts, Movie by Minute podcasts. And another one is Godfather Minute, which you do with your brother, Andy.
Yes, we've been doing that for about 6 years now. We only do one episode per week, so 1 minute per week. So it's taking us a long time to get through what are some lengthy movies. So I guess we probably have another 2 years left in us. So it feels like it, yeah. Unsure if we're going to do Godfather 3 or not, but stay tuned.
Yeah, you should probably skip that one, buddy.
No, come on. You have to do Godfather 3. You have to talk about Zaza.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. We'll see how we feel. And I think Godfather 3, it's not a great movie, but it's not as bad as everyone says. I mean, it's hindered by coming on the heels of two of the greatest movies ever made. So it's inevitably going to be
exactly
for that, but I still think it has some positive stuff in it. And if you're a huge Godfather fan, you should check it out. Check them out.
Yeah, definitely. And Sean and I were just talking about that last night. It was also, hindered by some confusing writing and a story that went all over the place, but it is what it is. And it was a decent movie. So today, though, we're going to talk about The Offer, which is a series on Paramount Plus, which if you had never heard of it, I can't say that I blame you, because Paramount Plus is not exactly one of those streaming services that everybody knows about. But The Offer on Paramount Plus is a 10-episode series based on the experience of Al Ruddy, who was the producer of The Godfather. And, you know, over the years, we've heard him in a lot of interviews talking about how the movie nearly didn't get made and the actors kept thinking they were going to be fired. Coppola was kind of a control freak and insecure, and he kept thinking he was going to be fired. And the studio hated Pacino; they didn't want him in the movie. And this series really digs into a lot of that, and also covers a lot of the real life mafia involvement with the making of the movie. Pretty intense at times. We saw some violence and things that I think were dramatized for the sake of the series. But I want to get you guys your overall impressions of the series before we get kind of started into some of the meat of it. So I don't know, Alex, if you want to go first, man.
Yes, I found The Offer to be very enjoyable. Obviously, over the years, I've accumulated quite a bit of Godfather behind the scenes knowledge, so it was fun seeing some of those things acted out on the screen. I really enjoyed the depiction of the creative process, like between Puzo and Coppola. Them doing this. There's a scene where they're sort of writing the scene where Mikey confronts the Turk and how they're gonna the best dramatic way to show it, and I found that stuff really fascinating. I was less interested in the behind the scenes business machinations and the various women that Ruddy was bedding down with at the time. But I guess if you're doing a thing based on the producer's memoirs, that's what you're going to get, as opposed to like Puzo's memoirs or Coppola's memoirs. That I guess would be the best. Would be the plum if they could if Coppola should totally write a memoir about his time on The Godfather. That would be a great thing to read. But yeah,
and
that's what I thought of it.
And I think that the closest we got to that was the that book where there's the script in there and all of his notes are in the margins.
Yeah, he basically, when he was making the movie, he made photocopies of the book and then just dog-eared it and wrote down notes as to how he's going to shoot stuff and everything like that. And it is also, he's probably sick of talking about The Godfather at this point. I mean,
I'm sure
for 50 plus years now. So I'm sure if someone could just comb through all the interviews he's done and put together a sort of compilation of all his Godfather stuff. So, but yeah. Enjoy it.
Sean, what about you? What are your overall impressions of the show?
Well, to tell you guys, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I really liked the acting. I thought the acting was tremendous in it. But the one thing is, I've seen a lot of interviews over the years with Ruddy, and some of these go back like 10, 15 years, maybe even longer. And he was telling a lot of these same stories that was in there. So I was interested, in how accurate was this series really, because we know Hollywood, anything Hollywood does, they're going to take liberties, they're going to do this and that. And I found it to be fairly accurate. I mean, there is some inconsistencies, like when they bring in Mickey Cohen. I mean, he was in jail at the time. He didn't shoot the back of Ruddy's car out. I mean, and the other thing, like when Joey Gallo gets whacked, he got killed after the movie was made.
Right.
So I was just wondering, Alex, like how accurate did you feel the series was?
Broad strokes, it was accurate. The one that really bugged me was there's a sort of one of the subplots is the studio executives feeling the need to like poke their noses in it and to change things and to bust Coppola's chops and everything. And there's the main guy is played by Colin Hanks, the main studio executive, and I was disappointed to learn that he is not.
He was a composite of several different people, right?
Right, and I think that's kind of like that's cowardly on behalf of if you're a studio executive and you're meddling in a picture and you're eventually proven wrong, you should be embarrassed and humiliated in public for that. So but I obviously didn't want to get sued by whoever this guy was, but it seems like it's kind of like it's setting up this straw man, and therefore no one is held responsible for, even now, of course, obviously studio executives are always poking their nose in. And the fact that this should have been a warning to them to say, this is what happens. If you're going to stick your nose in and you're wrong, you are going to be raked through the coals on a minor streaming services shot at trying to get people to check it out. So so anyway, that's one thing in terms of the accuracy. But I feel like they did get a lot of the sort of yeah, and there were also a couple of things they imply that Johnny Russo, the guy who played, I think that's his name, the guy who played Carlo, Connor's husband, they implied that he beat up Talia Shire in real life, and then that's why he beat him up in the movie, and that was not true at all. I guess they're not worried about him suing, but
well, the thing is, I don't know if you've seen any interviews with Johnny Russo, Alice, but he puts himself in the middle of every single big event that ever. I'm surprised he wasn't on the moon. I mean, he's everywhere. I mean, it's just ridiculous, his interviews.
Yeah, he's a character. I mean, it helps when you're kind of one of the only surviving cast members of a great thing that you can just kind of tell whatever stories you want. Probably not going to get contradicted too much by people. So
one thing he did say was that James Caan really beat him up during that scene where he beat him up on the street there, and he said James Caan kicked him in the ribs and broke a rib, and they asked James Caan about it, and he said it wasn't even Russo, it was a stuntman. It was a stuntman that he was fighting. So how could he have done that?
If James Caan if his memory is reliable, also because
that's true.
Because I heard another story. I read a book called Leave the Cannoli. It was about the making of The Godfather, and they imply that the James Caan became friendly with a lot of mobsters as he was preparing for the role. He started hanging out with a lot of these guys to kind of, soak up the mannerisms and stuff, and really became friendly with a lot of them. And supposedly they told James Caan they didn't like Johnny Russo. So in the scene where you're fighting him, really get him I guess, did they show that in the offer? I don't remember. Did they show a scene where he looked up and you could see? Okay. Yeah. That was, anyway, so who knows what to believe about anything.
Well, I think that is true that Caan was friendly with a lot of real life mobsters, because I listened to Michael Francese's podcast, and he's an ex capo in the Colombo family, and he talked about Caan, and I think James Caan's son's godfather was a underboss, I think, in the Colombo family, his real life godfather. So Caan really was friendly with a lot of real life mobsters.
Yeah, I heard a great anecdote where the FBI was, naturally sort of spying on the mafia people, and they made a note of this young upstart who was rising up through the ranks, and it turned out it was actually James Caan. They thought he was actually a mobster, but he was supposedly an actor, learning his craft. So great story, anyway.
There you go. That's funny. Yeah, there were some. I mean, I don't know how they would have. I don't know how they would have gotten some of the mob stuff from Al Ruddy. He obviously. I don't think he had as much involvement with the mafia as portrayed in the show, and then the behind the scenes mafia stuff. The stuff with Colombo and Gallo and those things. I don't know. I'm sure they just took that from books and historical accounts. There's no way Ruddy would have known any of that stuff.
It could have also been like FBI reports, though, too, Bill.
True, but I don't know how, were they going to get FBI reports to make the show? Who knows?
I thought that all the scenes with one of my objections to the mafia scenes was it really all seemed like Goodfellas light. Like anytime they show the mobsters talking, there had to be some 50s doo-wop playing in the background. I'm really surprised they didn't use Gimme Shelter, because that would have been that seemed to be what they were building up to is we might as well go the full Scorsese and really do it. But
do those zoom ins that Scorsese always does, right?
It's really it's kind of ironic that the movie about the making of The Godfather was heavily influenced by the making of Goodfellas. Like the style of Goodfellas is what they used to tell the making of The Godfather. It's kind of an ironic twist.
Well, so interesting, because Michael Tolkien, who was the creator of the series, he was a writer on Ray Donovan, and he took some definitely there were some actors that were in that have been in the mafia genre. A lot of Sopranos actors were in the show. Lola Glaudini, who was in The Sopranos. She was also in Ray Donovan. She was in it. Frank John Hughes, who played
Sinatra.
He played Sinatra. That's right. And Michael Rispoli was in it. Michael Gandolfini and Billy Magnuson, who were in Many Saints of Newark, were also in it. So a lot of Sopranos alum. And then I wanted to talk about what's that?
And Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah, Ferrigno was great.
Ferrigno. He was fantastic. He played what was the actor's name? Lenny Montana, right? Lenny Montana,
Right.
who
He was a pro wrestler.
He was a pro wrestler, right? And he had done like a B movie or something before they put him in The Godfather.
Yeah, Luca Brasi.
But the casting in this movie was fantastic. I thought Giovanni Ribisi, who played Joe Colombo, was terrific. The actors who played the actors were great. Justin Chambers, who played Brando, that scene where he plays Brando transforming into Vito was just amazing.
Yeah, it's always fun seeing actors play other actors that you're familiar with. So that part was really fun. But I really thought the casting all around was really good. I especially Matthew Good as Robert Evans. Robert Evans is such a bigger than life character as it is. So it's you can't really go too big when you're playing Robert Evans, baby.
The guy that played Crazy Joey Gallo too was really good. I thought he played that role good.
He was great, and the guy who played Frank, Bluedhorn, Charles Bluedhorn.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's been in so many different things, and you don't even until you look at his IMDb. Like he was in The Dark Knight Rises. He was in Game of Thrones. He's just been in so many of these big, big productions.
One thing I was surprised to learn afterwards was that Coppola says he got the plot idea for Godfather 3, which has to do with the Vatican investing in a company called Immobiliare. He got that Charles Bluedhorn. Is that how you say it?
Bluedhorn, yeah.
He apparently told Coppola that back during the making of GF1. He said, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this deal with the Vatican and this big company," and so that was where he held on to that idea for 25 years or whatever, and then made it part of the plot of GF3. So I like that it kind of tied back to the original Godfather 1 because that's where he got the idea from. But unfortunately, the idea turned out to be a little wonky in execution. But got to give him credit at least for using a Godfather. It was given to him by someone in the Godfather universe at least. So
yeah.
Thanks for that. But
that's interesting.
Bluedhorn was great.
He was fantastic. And then Juno Temple, who is in Ted Lasso, she was great too. And the guy who played Pacino was fantastic.
Oh yeah, really good.
He was dead on.
Yeah, I definitely think he was better playing the elfin young, inexperienced Pacino as opposed to the later. The sort of. In the beginning of the movie, Michael's a much more quiet, kind of reserved character. He's always a quiet, reserved person, but he didn't have that sense of menace that later
that he changes.
That later Michael had. But yeah, they're always. It's fun seeing actors. I wish they had done more recreations of. I like that. I kind of like that they didn't do any shot for shot. It's not like The Room where they did shot for shot recreations of stuff from the movie. You kind of almost saw it from different angles, like the scene where he wakes up at the horse's head. You kind of just see it you see them watching it from off camera, and so yeah, I guess I like that they did that. But it would have been fun seeing the fake actors play the same scenes in
and the same with the Sollozzo scene too. You see them kind of watching that as it happens, and that was amazing. That brings up a good question I wanted to ask you guys. If you could go back in time in the Godfather time machine and watch one scene being filmed on the original Godfather movie, what would it be?
I think I would probably I have to do one of the Brando scenes. You know what I mean? My first thought was, the scene with Michael and the Turk. But there's no Brando in that. If I'm going through a time machine to see The Godfather, I have to see Marlon Brando in it. So I would probably do the scene where, you know what, do the wedding scene. That way you get everyone in it.
That's true.
You
Yeah,
get,
that's
get
really
all the actors and stuff in it. So
yeah, it's
that's
really
what
the
I
only
would
time
do.
they're all together. Yeah, it's a good one.
Or the scene where it's funny because they're not like dramatic scenes, but like the scene where the Turk comes to the office to try to make the deal with the Don, because there you have all the main guys in one room together. You know, you have Ava Goda and you got the whole crew there. You got John Scazelle and so yeah, that's what I would pick.
Yeah,
Not the most exciting thing to watch being filmed, but at least I get to see all these great actors in their prime.
The only one missing from that is Pacino.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What about you, Sean? What scene would you?
I think I would go back to the wedding scene because from a lot of like the interviews I've seen, like a lot of real life mobsters put themselves in that from what I heard. You know, so in that scene, there was a lot of like they put them and their family in that scene in the wedding. And I seen an interview with Marlon Brando, and he was talking about how he used to go around mooning everybody. And the one time when they were filming that, he mooned this family that was sitting at the table, and somebody said, you know, that's Russell Buffalino and his family that you just mooned. And Brando's like, oh shit. And then he looked over and Buffalino was just laughing. So there was a lot of real life gangsters that was in that scene.
Plus, I guess if you went back to film it, you could kind of sneak in and get be an extra in the.
That's true.
You'd have to go back wearing period clothes, so you could just blend right in with the extras. So
right.
I like it.
And who knows, Bill? Maybe we could borrow that time machine from that lady that keeps emailing us about her time machine.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So for me, the scene I would want to sit in on, or at least watch them filming, is the Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes. That whole scene where, you know, they're Sonny and Tom are going back and forth about, you know, if we lose the old man, we make the deal, and it's easy for you to say he's not your father. And then, you know, then Michael says, I'll do it. I'll, you know, set up the meeting. I'd love to sit in and watch that scene. Watch them film that scene. It's a great one.
So you're picking Pacino over Brando.
Well, unfortunately, there's not a ton of scenes with them together, you know, with everybody else.
Yeah.
You know, you could do the one at the end where they're sitting in the garden and they're you know, and
that's just Pacino and Brando.
It's just those
you don't
two.
Get anyone else. So
right.
Yeah.
I drink more wine than I used to. It's all right, Pop. It's good for you.
I think I go back to the scene where Sonny is beating up Carlos, so we could finally answer this question as to whether or not he broke his rib, whether it was a stuntman or whatever. So.
We could put that to rest, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I wanted to point out with this series is that there's a lot of quotes from the Godfather that are said by, you know, the other actors that have nothing to do with the filming. Like, for instance, the first line of the show, I think, is one of the mob guys says, "Leave the cannoli," which, you know, is that you said, Alex, is a title of that book.
Yeah.
And
that's
then
kind of like the like the lowest hanging fruit of the Godfather quotes. Like everyone knows that one.
Right.
So like to have it right, it's you know, kind of hokey at this.
So, but it makes sense to open the series with that. I mean,
sure,
very first line.
Definitely lets you know what you're in for.
Right, exactly. And then you have the scene where Columbo goes into the bathroom to get the gun, and it's the old-fashioned, you know, toilet with the box and chain. And then Sean, we were talking about this one last night, but when Ruddy meets with Congressman Biaggi in the movie, you know, he says it's true, I do have a lot of friends, but they wouldn't be my friends if they knew I was going to help you make this movie, and I have to say no to you.
It's especially weird because they don't imply that, oh, like Coppola was there and said, oh, I'm going to put this in the movie. It's just almost like going on parallel with the unconnected with the actual making of the movie. Sort of these. Yeah, I guess it's just for, you know, a little wink to the fans who know the lines and stuff and can.
Right. Easter eggs, as they call them, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Fan service.
Fan service. Yeah. Yeah, but there's a lot of that stuff. It's funny because I missed this the first time. The first time I watched it, and then I watched it again to get ready for this show. And I noticed there was a scene where I forget. Oh, they were going into, it was the funeral for who was the guy that Gallo killed early on, Sean, in the
Oh, he was the guy that was with Lenny Montana.
Yeah.
And he was the short guy, the little guy. I can't remember his name.
So they were going in for the funeral. They were walking into the church for the funeral, and you see Ferrigno outside, and there's a cameraman out there taking pictures, and Ferrigno picks up the camera and smashes it on the sidewalk, like Sonny does at the wedding. I thought that was funny.
And it was like the Hulk.
Right. Hulk smash.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, one of the good scenes though in the offer though was I think the dinner, when they had the cast dinner, and then they all kind of break into you know, their roles and stuff. That was really good.
Yeah, that was a good scene where they were giving Carlo.
Oh yeah, Khan was all over him. Yeah.
Yeah, that was supposedly a true thing that really happened. I mean, them having a dinner where they're kind of in character and so on.
Yeah. That was a great scene. But yeah, some of the Sean, you had mentioned before some of the historical, inaccuracies. The Joey Gallo was actually murdered after because they at one point in the series they imply that, or they don't imply, they actually show that Gallo was shaking down
Ruddy
for the money that they were going to use to go to Sicily.
Right.
And that if he didn't give it to him that night, that I don't know, he was going to do something, but then that night Joey Gallo ends up getting murdered. That's not really how it happened. Gallo actually didn't even get murdered until after the movie came out. So,
and Bill, you got a good story with Joey Gallo.
Yeah.
That?
Yeah. Well, well, when I met Joey Gallo, my dad used to be a cab driver in New York City, and he was driving his cab one morning, and there was a lot of traffic, just a ton of traffic, and it broke up a little bit, and he was allowed to go through, and he saw what was holding it up. There was police tape outside on the sidewalk, and he actually saw a chalk drawing of a body, like the outline of a body. And when he got home later that night, he saw in the news that it was Gallo, the crime scene that they were looking at, because when he was shot in the restaurant. And it's actually different. They don't show this in the show, but in real life, what happened was they shot him in the restaurant, and he actually got up out of his chair and chased the gunman to the door and got out to the sidewalk before he finally dropped dead. And so that's where they had all of the cops and everything. They had taped it off, and he was caught in traffic because of that.
Wow. Small world.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the Bob stuff though, I think they did get it right though. I think that was inaccurate, definitely, because Gallo was killed after the movie came out. And then the other thing I mentioned was Mickey Cohen. He was in jail at that whole time period when he supposedly shot out the back of Ruddy's car. But other than that, I think a lot of the stuff with Columbo and the behind the scenes stuff, going on with Bonanno and Lucchese and the rest of them, I think they got that pretty accurate. I think that was pretty, most of the mob stuff they got pretty accurate. But Hollywood's always going to take liberties, and I understand why they brought that Gallo thing into, and changed the timeline on it. I get it, but I don't really have any other beefs as far as the other mob stuff.
Yeah, Alex Sean is our resident mob expert, so
I can tell.
He knows quite a bit. Yeah. And then a couple other notes that I had. There's a little bit of a tie back to Star Wars, where it's kind of implied, I guess. There's a scene early on where Ruddy is meeting with Coppola, asking him to do the movie, and you see a guy sitting in the background with a beard, and you kind of assume that that's Lucas, right? That's George Lucas. And I guess one of the reasons why Coppola really wanted to make this movie was because Lucas had just bankrupted their company, the American, what was it called? American Zoetrope.
Yeah, that's right. Zoetrope. Yeah.
And he made with THX 1138 because it was such a disaster. It just didn't do well. And they spent so much money on it. They essentially bankrupted the company. So Coppola was kind of desperate to get a hit.
Yeah. I wonder whatever happened to that guy. George Lucas, I mean.
That George Lucas guy? I don't know. I know.
Drove him out of business.
I think he was like an independent filmmaker for a while. He did a couple of small movies. I can't really remember them. Oh, wait a minute.
One of the things I was hoping The Offer was going to be a huge hit, because I would love to see more making of series is about. So I always find it really interesting. Like I mentioned The Room before. The movie Ed Wood is another movie that I find is a really fascinating, like, making of movie kind of thing. I really hope they do more of these type of things, because I mean Star Wars alone I feel like has a really entertaining making of story, but I wonder if they could even do it, without Disney being involved. And if Disney is involved, they're not going to want to give you a warts and all presentation of it. They're going to
whitewash it,
clean it and everything. So we'll have to wait till whenever. When Star Wars goes into public domain, which will probably be another 90 to 250 years.
Yeah. Well, I know that that Vice channel, they do a lot of they did some sort of a documentary about the making of Star Wars, right? They had they had like Marsha Lucas and a bunch of those people. I don't know if you ever saw that one.
No, not that I remember anyway. I've seen a lot of Star Wars documentaries over the years, but
it was fairly recent. Yeah, it was.
Well, you don't see Marsha Lucas very frequently, so
no, that's why this was this stood out so much. But yeah, it was a fairly recent document. It was a series actually. So,
but yeah, I feel like I would like to see more making of TV shows. They should do like one of those like like American Crime Story or American Horror Story. They should do like Hollywood Movie Story, where every season they tackle a different making of thing.
Yeah.
Take that idea, Hollywood. It's all yours.
There you go. Free of charge.
Yeah, you do like The Wizard of Oz, Star Wars, all these classic films that have interesting backstories.
Oh, yeah.
That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you guys both, what do you think of how they portrayed Sinatra in The Offer? Do you think it was pretty accurate? Because they make him out to be a real asshole. I mean, there's no other way to describe it.
I've read a few biographies from Frank Sinatra, and by all accounts, he seems like he could definitely be a giant asshole.
Okay.
So I totally believe that he was, especially that era of Sinatra, where he was kind of like had reached the peak of his fame. And
the one thing though, I guarantee he didn't talk to Joe Colombo like that though.
That's
one thing. He would only did that once.
Yeah. But I guess that scene where Puzo came up to him in a restaurant was a real thing that happened, where Puzo went up to him and was like, "Oh, I'm such a super fan," and Sinatra was not happy to meet him.
Yeah, I thought I heard you guys talking about that, Alex, on Godfather Minute. I know I had heard an account where somebody said that Sinatra, like, he didn't even look up from his dinner. He just started yelling at Puzo and tell him to get lost.
Yeah, the details vary depending on the person telling it, but the broad strokes that Puzo went up to him and then it was a negative impact. That part seems to be universally agreed upon, but how macho each of them were depends on who's telling the story. So, but Sinatra, fascinating jerk guy.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't think Puzo was all that macho, but.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I feel like I would just love to see a spin-off show where it's just Puzo and Coppola hanging out and doing stuff. That I thought they were the most fascinating characters in the whole thing, and they were funny characters too, because they were very outspoken.
And the actors that played them were really good.
Yeah,
really good.
Yeah. And they were together throughout. I mean, they collaborated on all three movies, right? Did Puzo have anything to do with Godfather 3? I don't remember.
I think he did.
Yeah.
Because I remember them saying like, oh, he would never do another one without, you know, there's always the idea of, oh, doing Godfather 4 or continue the series. But Coppola was like saying without Puzo
Right.
that he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
So it's really amazing they have not tried to reboot, like not reboot it, but, you know, revive it, do a continuation or a Lego sequel or whatever like that, you know.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so much, you know, the movies cover so much of their story anyway. Essentially, they cover it from beginning to end of the Corleone family. So there's really not much else to tell at this point. But you're right. I think with everything getting rebooted and you know, spin-offs of everything, it is surprising.
Yeah, like they don't have Michael Corleone's grandson now being the
right.
You know, yeah, I know the persistent rumor for a while was continuing after Godfather 3, where oh my gosh, I'm blanking on his name.
Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia takes over. So you're contrasting the rise of Andy Garcia with the showing Sonny when he was a younger guy coming up. You know what I mean? You're contrasting the father and son again. This time it's Sonny and Vincent and whatever.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to see like what would Sonny be like if he was, you know, if he wasn't as a hothead and didn't get himself killed.
Sure, yeah.
You know, how would he run the family? It's probably, and because they did make Vincent sort of almost a composite of all of the brothers and Vito, you know, that would have been interesting.
Yeah. I guess now Andy Garcia is too old now to do that, so they would have to do
too old.
Story. Wrong show.
Funny. All right. So one last question for me for you guys. What was your biggest surprise or biggest takeaway from the series? Like something you didn't know that, you know, that now you know.
Huh. Well, I don't know. I mean, like the Evans stuff I found really interesting, how he was, you know, it's really a weird thing with Hollywood where even if you have a huge hit, you're still not given like, okay, this guy clearly knows what he's doing. Let's give this person free range. Or all like even Coppola, he had Godfather 1 and Godfather 2, and he still had a hard time having Hollywood play ball and let him make movies. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, or you'll hear like about Martin Scorsese. Oh, he's been trying to get this movie made for 10 years. Like Scorsese has movies that he wants to do and people are telling him no. What's going on here? So anyway, so the Evans stuff really kind of illustrated that, like that you know, you're only as good as your most recent thing. Like when you're down, no one cares. You know, no one's gonna lend you a hand. But when you're up, everyone, you know, still no one's gonna lend a hand. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, that's Hollywood, though. I mean, when you look at Hollywood today, and the only thing that gets made are these, you know, gigantic superhero movies, or so it's really tough to get anything made these days. That's why everybody's going to these streaming services.
Yeah, Paramount Plus.
There you go.
Taste the rainbow.
What about you, Sean? What's your biggest surprise or takeaway?
Well, you know, I knew a lot of the backstory because I said I saw those interviews with Ruddy, so I knew the mob did play a role in controlling a lot of movie. And at first they were dead against it, but I think the one thing that surprised me was kind of how, you know, the Italian American community really was against it at first. You know, because you know, a lot of my Italian buddies they all love it now. You know, but then when, you know, back then, like Biaggi talks about how all his constituents, you know, were against it, and he went out, you know, dead set against having it made, and, you know, was making Italians look bad. So that kind of surprised me how, you know, Italian Americans were so against it right at the beginning. And I don't know if that's fully accurate or, you know, if that was just brought into the offer.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really know what the attitude was, you know, towards making the movie. It'd be interesting if we could like pull articles from the New York Times or whatever during that time and see what was going on.
That was also an early Sopranos subplot, wasn't it? Wasn't like one of the neighbors wasn't somebody doing an like they were against the stereotype that all Italians. I thought I remember that being an early subplot from the Sopranos also.
Oh, There were a bunch of episodes like that in The Sopranos.
Okay.
Yeah, there was one where Melfi's ex-husband was obsessed with how Italians were portrayed, and
Right. That was it. Yeah.
yeah, and then they actually talked about Columbo, who he founded the Anti-Defamation League, and Columbo being a mobster, kind of ironic that he would. But yeah, there was a lot of that. So for me, my biggest takeaway or surprise, I guess, from this series was all the pressure that Ruddy had on him. I mean, he had, when you think about it, he had the studio that was driving him crazy. He had Coppola that he had to deal with, who Coppola was so insecure and such a control freak. At least that's the way he was portrayed in this series. All the stuff that was going on with the actors, and the studio didn't want Pacino. Then he was dealing with the mafia, and his wife left him, and he was dealing with Gulf and Western, all of that stuff, trying to get this movie made. And then people say, "Oh, why don't you want to do Godfather Part 2?" Well, guess what? I need a bit of a break. I don't think I can continue this.
It's really amazing how close. You don't realize how close some great things were to being totally awful.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You just change one or two little things and it could have totally taken the whole thing down, and yet somehow they managed to emerge, like when they were showing the alternate posters
Right.
for the movie, and it was all like the cheesy kind of
Right.
things that from this side of history, it's hard to say, like, how did they not know that everything about this movie is iconic? Like, how did they? Why?
Or if you try to
talk
imagine
about
the movie without Pacino or Brando in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, like Robert Redford as as Michael Corleone just does not. It's baffling. So
yeah, it's and it just shows there was no grand plan. I mean, it all kind of came together, and somehow it came together, by hook or by crook, and it became what it is today, which is one of the greatest. I think it consistently ranks, either number 1 or 2 and the IMDb list of greatest movies of all time.
it's on cable 24 hours a day.
It sure is. Yeah.
You can always flip around, and eventually you'll stumble across The Godfather playing on some channel.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, this has been a fantastic discussion about The Offer. So we will we'll wrap up here. But Alex, thank you so much, man, for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Alex.
It's been my pleasure. There was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun. We'll love to have you come back. We'll probably, I'm sure we're going to do more shows like this talking about mob movies. I know we want to do one like on Goodfellas, and we'll do one on some of the other mob movies that don't get as much attention. Sean, I know you got
do
a bunch.
Casino.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Casino's one we definitely want to do. We'll talk about an equal amount of blueberries in every muffin for sure.
Do you have any idea how long that's going to take?
That's one of my favorite scenes. I don't know why that always sticks out for me.
I love Casino. I think Casino has so many great little scenes like that where it's funny. Anyway, yes, Casino.
Yeah, well, definitely, and tell Andy he missed out on some good fun today. Maybe he'll come back, or he'll come with you next time.
We can never be on the same podcast in case there's like a hit or something. One of us, we always have to have these like
designated
one
survivor.
One of us dies, the other one can continue the show. So maybe after we're done with the whole thing, we can show up together.
Sounds good. All right, Alex, thank you so much, man. So Sean, great episode, right?
Yeah, this was a great discussion. It was a good series. And the one thing, Alex, that you said that I'm really thinking about now is, boy, it would really be great to see a show just on the making of series and stuff, just like making of movies like Jaws and series like Sopranos and stuff like that. And that would just really be interesting. I think a lot of people would really like that. Yeah.
I'll sign. I'll kickstart it if you start it. So.
All right, let's do it, buddy.
We'll get right on that. All right, guys. Well, thank you again, Alex. And if you like this episode, make sure that you subscribe and you find us. We are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on all of the podcast apps. We are on YouTube. So make sure if you do listen on YouTube, you hit the subscribe and give us some good feedback, because we always enjoy the feedback, and we even read some of it right here on the show. So thank you, everybody. And hey, that's enough out of you.
Good night, everybody.